Thank you so much for inviting us to take part in your series on responsible AI. My name is Hilary. I'm the Common Voice Community Manager, and I joined the Mozilla Common Voice team in June last year. The title of my talk today is Who Are We Listening to? Building Blocks for Trustworthy AI. So the content of my presentation will form 5 parts. The first part will focus on the voice ecosystem. The second part will focus on what is Common Voice. The third part will focus on Common Voice functionality, the fourth part impact, and the fifth part 2022 question mark. Just to note, because of my reading notes / also dyslexia, I have notes and I'm using another screen. So if it looks like I'm being distant, it's because I'm using another screen. So awesome. So let's start with the voice ecosystem. So Bell Labs has a long history in voice technology, pioneering key developments in speech recognition and impacting the wider ecosystem. Voice is such an interface in which so many of us interact with the internet and ultimately each other. From dictation software for document creation to automated speech recognition for subtitling videos. On my phone, I have access to this technology, but for so many people in the world, they don't. Speech recognition technology has left so many people behind, whether it's not understanding African American vernacular, English, accents such as Scottish, or even including languages such as Kiswahili and Guarani. So I want to ask the room today, the virtual room that we have together that we're sharing, what languages do you speak? If you can, please share the languages that you speak on the chat. And if it's possible, if our hosts could read them out, because I can't see the chat panel, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'll start to read them. I'll start to type them. No problem. Okay, so we start with the most important language in the world, which is Italian, which is mine. Then English, French, Russian, Ukrainian, German, Tamil, Persian, Spanish, Armenian. We are converging. I think I said German.
Greek.
Greek.
Of course, you can miss it.
Yeah, well, there are a few Greek people.
Serbian.
Say again?
Hungarian, Serbian.
Yep. Serbian, Hungarian, yep.
Cool. Thank you so much for everyone that was sharing. For
California reading. English is the last one. Okay, cool. Swedish, Korean.
Thank you so much for reading out the languages that are spoken in this room, and also for everyone for sharing. And like the languages in the room show like how multilingual the space is, but also in our wider communities, there's over 7,000 languages in the world. And when we're creating voice technology, we have to constantly think of the question of who are we listening to? How are we collaborating and providing access to access and supporting communities in creating voice technology? So why is this important? So there are amazing pioneering studies regarding demographic biases in speech technology and voice technology. So in particular, the work of Rachel Tapman's work, a paper evaluating gender and dialect bias in YouTube's automatic captions, which found differences between gender and accent. The work of Johan Diedrich on Dark Matters, which creates an interactive web experience, highlighting the absences of Black speech in training data sets. The reason why also it's very important for us to address demographic bias in voice technology and speech technology is because of information access. So every year, Mozilla Internet Health Team does a report. This is the report from last year, where they asked 100+ people to share healthy and unhealthy moments for the internet around the world in 2022. One internet health moment highlighted by Shubisha was in Cameroon. To quote, in Cameroon, viral languages worked with local communities to share videos and audios in indigenous languages about access, about basic COVID-19 information and prevention. This example highlights that it's really important for us to ensure that the internet is built on inclusivity linguistically, as is a vital pathway for information access. Another key part of voice technology is data ownership. Today, speech recognition is tied up in a few companies that have heavily invested in them and that have been building up enormous proprietary voice data sets through product use. Most of the voice data to train speech-to-text engines is not available for people, a majority of people. It can be expensive to obtain or simply non-existent for languages not globally spread. The innovation potential of technology is therefore widely untapped. To quote the algorithm newsletter in January 2019, by selling you the powerful and seamless conveniences of voice assistants, Google and Amazon have slowly inched their way into being a central platform for all your data and the core engine for algorithmically streaming your life. So who are we listening to? Going back to that important question that we mentioned at the beginning of this talk. So one of the things that we have at Mozilla is the Trustworthy AI, which is a movement building framework that we use that informs all of our projects in the foundation. And essentially, we need to move towards a world of AI that is helpful rather than harmful to human beings. For us, this means two things. Human agency is a core part of how AI is built and integrated, and corporate accountability is a real and enforced. So how are we trying to actualize this reality? So for example, we're shifting the conversation from personal behavior to systems change. So a fellow called Renee DeRista has been a key in shifting misinformation conversation from fake news to free speech does not equal to free reach. Companies have responded. So Pinterest stopped sharing vaccination search results and Facebook has started promoting WHO info with vaccine posts. We're also holding companies accountable and our approach is spreading. So for example, our YouTube Regrets campaign, where we collected YouTube user stories about the platform's recommendations engines, leading them down a bizarre and sometimes dangerous pathway. We are also supporting trustworthy AI innovations, such as creating useful AI building blocks that can be used and improved by anyone through our project Common Voice, which I am going to speak to you more about today. Cool. So what is Common Voice? So I'm going to present to you a timeline of Common Voice. So Common Voice launched in June 2017 and wanted to build a publicly available data set of labeled audio, so transcribed or short sentences that anyone can use to create voice-enabled applications. The Common Voice data set first started in English, then became multilingual in 2018, including languages such as German, Irish, Kinyarwanda, and Mongolian. In 2018, we collaborated with partners and communities to create speech corpuses for Kinyarwanda, laying down the foundation for voice technology in Rwanda to develop open source voice technologies in their own languages, which I'll be speaking a bit more later. Mozilla in 2022 transitioned into the Mozilla Foundation. Today, it represents the largest multilingual public domain voice data set with more than 13,000 hours of voice data in 76 different languages, including widely spoken and regional languages such as Welsh and Kabyle, and more than 166,000 people worldwide have contributed to the project. So to summarize, Common Voice is a project to help make voice recognition more open and accessible to everyone. So what are some of the ways in which we're thinking about inclusion and how we're listening to people? So as part of our community strategy, we thought it was very important for us to intentionally create space for discussion for communities to help build mutual understanding and facilitate future collaborations. We established the Common Voice Language Reps, which is an explicit avenue for representatives of language communities to advocate for their language community needs, also empower contributors in language communities with knowledge and influence to shape the community experience. So recently on the blog, we asked the members to share why they were interested in Common Voice, and to quote some of the community members, Johan Monte from Catalan, the Common Voice project makes it easier for speakers communities to participate in the creation of open linguistics research resources. Atakunda Gift, who speaks Goran Kole, Common Voice helps to create a data set that caters for voices with various accents, age groups, and genders. This is essential in machine learning, where models can identify the variation of Orankole and still respond effectively. And Hubert, who's from the Guarani community, Common Voice brings speakers of the Guarani a tool to use new technologies in their own languages, and therefore provides opportunities to grow into the speakers and for the speakers and the language. Another way in which we are working on making Common Voice more inclusive and linguistically inclusive is through our work on languages, variants, and accents. So currently, when we do voice data collection, we use the ISO 369's code as the way 639 code as the international standard for collecting language data. And in December 2021, we created a new feature that basically allowed for people to write in the accents, because previously it was like a preset list that was provided by some communities. And one of the things that we've been deeply thinking about is how can we do more, because languages are complex. They're not simple. For example, the differences between macro languages that have competing orthographies, even within a language itself. We are currently consulting with our language communities to decide which variant should be available to help communities systematically differentiate within languages, especially to support languages with a diverse range of speakers. So we are now relying on BCP 47 as a flexible system that allows communities to pull out key information such as region, dialect, and orthography. We plan to build a support in the future for multiple orthographies for a single language. So that's one way in which we're thinking about inclusion. Another way in which we're thinking about inclusion is through the language diversity impact assessment. So our team has been reflecting on how we can be more inclusive for languages that take part in Common Voice. This has resulted in the language diversity impact assessment. So for example, in developing features, guidelines, and ideas, we want to ensure multilinguality issues are at the center, and we don't bias towards one or few. So how does this work? So the impact assessment takes two processes that can be run before a new proposal. The first step is that a survey is filled out with questions related to language diversity to try and determine if there are any gaps for the proposal or potential issues. The survey is written, is a written survey rather than quantitative. And then based on this report, a final assessment is made along a number of full axes, such as resourcing and localization. So who are we building with and who are we building for? As mentioned at the beginning of the talk, voice technology doesn't serve everyone equally, and we've been reflecting on ways in which we can listen to different voices and who belong to diverse range of demographics. So some of the work in which we're doing to help support this is through the MCV diversity, equity, and inclusion data set success criteria. So firstly, this diagram on the screen is some of the work that we've been doing internally. So for example, we're considering one group, so which is the circle on the left, is protected characteristics, demographics, identities within that have an impact on voice and speech characteristics, where a speech recognition model is trained on a data that is unbalanced with respect to pitch and porosity and punctuation. It will exhibit low performances for people who are poorly represented in the data. So this includes characteristics such as age, disabilities, speech pathologies, race, ethnicity, national origin, gender, and so. And the second area that we're focusing on is linguistic and phonetic factors and impact on speech characteristics. These often but don't always overlap with the above, so the second group on the left. We are also consulting with experts and outreaching to our community members to ensure that their voices are heard in these discussions, and we want to build interventions focusing on these groups. So now going into the platform itself, I'm going to give you an overview of the functionality of Common Voice. I hope it inspires you to possibly contribute. So the first thing we're going to cover is the signing up page. So currently on Common Voice, when people sign up and create a profile, they can, one, download their own data that they've contributed, they can share their accents, they can contribute to multiple languages, and they can also use the functionality to like go onto our leaderboard that we have for people that contribute and want to be visible on the leaderboard itself. So, but we also allow the people to contribute anonymously, just so that's the option for them. And then if they do create a profile, they can request for their data to be deleted. So on the listen interface, so on Speak, it highlights the ways in which you can contribute your voice. So for example, on the screen, the text says the song has been covered by several acts. So a sentence appears and they have a few seconds to read the sentence. It's around 12 to 13 seconds. And then on the right-hand side, there's like 5 clips that load and people can respond to those questions, those sentences and read them out loud. But if they find a sentence hard, they can skip it or they can report sentences for difficulty or any errors that they found with them. And this also comes in the data set as like reported sentences. So here's like a video of like someone pretending to contribute. So like you see the sound waves going up and down, and then the moving of the text for, and then another clip loads. And then another important function on Common Voice is the listen aspect. So you want to ensure that like when people contribute that they follow like our validation guidelines. So these guidelines were created by community members. They cover things as like pronunciation. So like we want to vary pronunciation, but we also want to ensure that people say what is on the sentences, like so like they don't necessarily add another word or such. So basically, on the website, there's a link to the validation criteria, and people can listen to other people's contributions, and they can put a yes or no when validating their voice clips. They can also, again, report using the report function. So here's a quick video of that happening. So someone's playing someone else's contribution, and then they've pressed yes because the text contribution was right to say yes to. So another key part of Common Voice is the dataset. So this dataset is freely downloadable, and you can download the dataset as a whole, and you can also download, if you scroll further down on the page, the single word target segment. So like, yeah. And also on the data set itself, it includes information about demographics. So like who people that have decided to share their demographics, so gender, their age group, and also accent. So yeah, here's a little graphic demo of it, and you can see the different languages that people can use to download dataset. And also an important feature is that we ask people to provide their email addresses in order to like follow up with GDPR and download data requests. So yeah, that's a little small demo of that. And then another key aspect is looking at the languages that are currently launched and also in progress. So essentially, because part of like Common Voice is like a large and important part is the crowdsourcing and the communities that contribute. So when a language comes onto Common Voice, someone requests it by localization, and then they help to collect sentences under Creative Commons License 0. And once they have a certain a number, so 5,000, their language is then launched. And then so it moves into here. And then when people can, once their language is launched, they can contribute onto the website, and they can also contribute through things such as a sentence collector as well. And to note, we are like currently doing internal review about the 5,000 words, and we want to still make that more accessible, especially for low resource languages. So we've been having conversations with our community regarding that as well. So I hope that does inspire you to possibly contribute your language if it isn't there, or if it is there, feel free to contribute. So just realize, okay, cool. So impact. So how are people using the Common Voice dataset? So the Common Voice data set in 2021 had 13,000 hours of voice data, 76 languages, 393 contributors, and over 200 developers helped to create the software through contributions and being part of the team. And in fact, this week is the next Common Voice dataset release, and it's going to be exciting because there are more hours. In fact, it's grown by 3,000 hours. So how are people using the dataset? So as mentioned earlier, I mentioned some of the languages that we have on Common Voice, such as Kinyarwanda. So Rwandans have a new tool in the fight against COVID-19, the Mbaza chatbot, that provides timely and accurate information about the pandemic in Kinyarwanda, French, English, and French languages. So in 2019, Mozilla and GIZ co-hosted an ideation hackathon in Kigali to create a data corpus for Kinyarwanda, to lay the foundations for the local voice recognition applications. The hackathon gave way to Digital Ugumanda, a Rwandan startup. Through their efforts, they collected 1,700,000 hours of Kinyarwanda voice data and arranged a diverse set of over 844 contributors. They are not only building their data set, but also working on products and services that are locally relevant to their mission to democratize access to information and services. In September last year, Mbaza was launched, a chatbot that provides timely information about the pandemic in languages such as Kinyarwanda. Mbaza is based out of the Rwandan Biomedical Center and a collaboration between Mozilla Common Voice, Digital Ugumanda, RISA, and GIZ. To quote Remy, who's a community lead for voice technology at Mozilla, Mbaza is a great example of how what more inclusive voice technology can achieve by building a voice data set using Kinyarwanda. Millions of thousands of Rwandans have access to critical information about the pandemic. And the goal is to make it a conversational chatbot as well. So it's amazing to see the work that they're doing with it. Another example, so some of the community members from the Devehi community created a text-to-speech service on one of their local websites. And like, this is really inspiring because in the language, it basically talks about like, hey, are you interested to see how this works or contribute to it? And then it links to Common Voice. So that's a really cool way in which like they're both talking about the project, but also making impact. Another example is from the Welsh community. So Macasen is a software that provides an open source Welsh language personal digital assistant. You can read more about this via this paper that is on ACL Anthology. Oh, I need water. So at Bangor University, Language Technologies Unit have been part of the Common Voice community, creating community to help crowdsource voice data and to develop Macasen. And basically you can use it like on iOS, and it's really amazing to see like this is being created because like voice technology is not just the commercial thing, it's also how we preserve and maintain language in the home if people do use it in their homes. So it's just really inspiring as well. So I do want to quickly mention some academic and corporate research that has used the Common Voice dataset. So for example, there's a paper by Genta, Indra, Winata et al. On meta-transfer learning for code switch speech recognition. So they utilize the Common Voice dataset with other datasets to train a model, and they found that transfer learning is a good approach to leverage low resource language issues, and an accented speech such as Common Voice helped to improve the performance of code switching automatic speech recognition significantly. And code switching in this context is the switching between two languages. So they used English, the English accented dataset, Common Voice for Chinese, and then used Chinese as well. And then Facebook, or AKA now Meta, have used Common Voice dataset to train their XLSR with other data sets, and they created a self-supervised model for a variety of speech tasks, so performing speech recognition, speech translation, and language identification. So what is the future? And I'm going to come to a close as we enter chapter 5 of this presentation. So internally, we've been thinking about goals as to regarding like what are we going to think about in 2022, which we are now in. So such as delivering a software and platform experience that is unparalleled for inclusion, mobilizing organizations to share their data through mass donation, and also drive data set quality and uptake in model development. So it's really inspiring to see like what we've been like, well, as it's self-inspiring, but to think about what our goals are and like it's been encouraging for this year. So I just wanted to share that. And I wanted to end with saying, who are we listening to when we are creating and developing tools? We're listening to communities, exposing communities, who are we listening to? And I want to leave with like this statement that we've used sometimes in like a community campaign. So imagine a world where voice recognition supports every language. So like every language on the chat that was shared earlier when we had when I started my presentation. And not that is like that every language is available, but every language is like got really amazing good models that that people can use for their communities. And I hope that inspires you to contribute to your voice today and to also engage more with the Common Voice project. Thank you so much for your time, and I welcome your questions. We can check out the hashtag Common Voice on Twitter, or we can contribute today on commonvoice.mozilla.org. Thank you.